It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, December 4th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that honestly can't believe that Coots shootout move worked again.
I mean, it's a good move. Not everybody watches all film, so hey, good for him.
Fair enough. Flyers came out of Pittsburgh with that win. We'll talk about that, what they need to do that again tonight, plus our Nemesis of the week.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, I sort of said that in jest in the opening there, but God bless Sean Couturier and that move.
Yeah,
It is fun to watch him do, right?
it's fun to watch. It's a skillful move. I'm sure at some point there'll be goalies that are going to get wise to it, but he hasn't done it enough,
Yeah.
So I think,
Well,
yeah, I think it still caught him by surprise. I mean, and Jerry was
yeah,
having a pretty good game, so
it's true. And it was in a penalty shot situation, not in a
right,
shootout. So maybe it doesn't show up on shootout tape.
right.
So that could be it as well. Just a quick side note, in some follow up from the previous game against the Devils in that altercation between Travis Konechny and Brendan Smith. Brendan Smith got a 2-game suspension for that, which I was actually surprised he got 2. I thought it might just be 1 or the
I thought
max
about being
fine. But
one also.
yeah,
But Konechny, got a fine too, right? So
yeah,
they
yeah.
all deserve it. Like that kind of one, started the other, and yeah, I think that was all just.
Yeah. In the meantime, Mark Stahl checked back in versus the Pens, and Igor Zamula was out. And I, I'm really starting to question this, and that it's a tough choice. I get it because Zamula is struggling. Like that is fair. He's
And
making
put
some
Belpino
mistakes.
in.
Yeah, that's the question because I know Zamula is struggling, and but I just don't think Mark Stahl is the answer, right?
He's not the answer for anything. And so the point is, if you don't think Belpedio is the answer, and you don't think Zamula is the answer, then bring up someone from Lehigh. If you think one of those guys is an answer, then put them in instead of Stahl, because now I think we all know what Mark Stahl is, and he's more of a negative than a positive. Plus, there's an offensive player that could be brought up. An offensive player got hurt, and nobody's in there either. So you kind of look at the situation and you say, at least on the blue line, is Mark Stahl really better than Belpedio? And I'm not a big Belpedio guy because I think, it's a small window for what he's done for this team. But Belpedio's played better. He's faster. Even if Zamula,
Yeah.
you want to tell me he's inconsistent, Mark Stahl, we could talk about 3 plays. He was bad. He couldn't get Jake Ensel out of the crease on the first goal. On the second goal, he fell behind and couldn't catch up on the play. It's just he's only good now if you have a couple of guys injured and you need an emergency defenseman. That's when I would put in Mark Stahl.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that it's just been very obvious that the speed isn't even there enough to like cover for maybe some other things he could potentially do, which he isn't doing well either. And
No,
so I think it's time to figure that out. And I
yeah,
think you've laid out several good options there. But man, on the plus side of things, I am so thrilled with how the penalty kill has continued
yeah,
to
it's
shine
legit.
here. Yeah, like 5 for 5 plus that Laughton shorthanded goal, which,
Yeah.
as a side note, so happy to see Scott Laughton
Yeah. It was
back
nice to
on the
see him
board.
post game. It was definitely something big. But you know, it's a combination. Their PK is legit, and it's just hard to believe that the Penguins power play is that bad. But we talk
Well,
about
that
it,
too.
and it is that bad.
It is that bad. And like just the Pens announcers, I listen to them talk about it and they're just beside themselves. They don't
They
even
want
know.
to,
Yeah. Yeah. But I do it was funny. Scott Laughton was like, "Oh yeah, I blacked out after that
yeah.
goal."
Right.
It was so funny.
It was.
But again, and that PK was especially necessary in that overtime. I'm really interested to
Yeah.
see what the fallout might be because it was Joel Farabee that took that penalty, and
Yeah.
we know that Farabee was in the doghouse in the previous game. So I hope there are no implications from that because I thought Joel Farabee like acquitted himself well in this game
I don't think
overall.
there's going to be, but you know, should there be based on the way things have been treated? Maybe, but I don't think for
Maybe.
whatever reason my gut says there's not going to be because if there's going to be, then they have to make other roster changes. So I think
Yep.
he's going to let it go.
Yeah, I certainly hope so because I think that's the right thing to do. Yeah, this game, I don't know, man. It was weird. The first period, like literally nothing happened.
Awful, so awful.
Yeah, and it was like kind of frustrating that the Flyers couldn't take advantage of the fact that the Pens were just
But nobody
skating
was
around
shooting
in
the puck.
circles.
Like they couldn't get the puck on net.
Yeah,
It was just bad.
right. And but it was so good to see in the second period the Flyers turned it on. Whatever it
Mhm.
is, they turned it on. And so they were back to that hybrid approach of taking a lot of shots on goal, but also having an aggressive block shot mentality on the back end. And, they had 27 shots on goal from the second period on. Flyers, I thought, dominated a significant portion of that second period despite the Letang goal.
But not enough of
Um,
it though. In the end, not enough.
yeah,
But they did.
right. They did. And so I think that, what Torts had to say post game, I think is actually pretty on the money in
Mhm.
the sense that he says, this team has some issues. They're going to make some mistakes. They do make some mistakes, but they have guts. And
They
that's
do.
what gets them through in some of these wins. And I think he's spot on there. And I think if you have to make up for some, functional mistakes out there, with just sheer determination, I think that's also fun in a lot of ways.
But is it going to be fun when we're talking about the draft and they're picking 13th and they're not making the playoffs? Like this is going to be
Well,
the conundrum of the second half. It is.
yeah, I think so. There's a certain camp of people that just want a top 5 pick no matter what. And there's a certain camp of people that want to see this incremental improvement and want to
I
see
will
them
tell
win
you, I
some
think there's
games.
more that want the pick though.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to
That's just
that.
my
I
gauge.
think
That's how I gauged it.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. It's hard to tell just from social media, to
Yeah.
be honest. So, and
Yeah.
I would hate to get all of my information just from social media
No, no,
on
no. If you
this
did
point.
that, oh
Yeah, yeah. Of course, the other thing we have to talk about is Tyson Foerster. He is really starting to put the pieces together. So he had an assist versus the Canes, 2 goals against the Devils. One of the goals got changed from Walker to
yeah.
him. So, and then a goal and an assist versus the Pens. And he got the power play goal. He had the most power play time on ice in the game versus the Pens. And that says a lot that the team has confidence in him to
But
give
it
him all
should have
those
always
minutes.
been there. Like that, him in that spot, him with the power play time should have been a constant. It should have been. And
Yeah.
actually, but he made one good adjustment. Like you don't always have to shoot your one timer. He shot his wrist shot. It's really good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that wrist shot doesn't take as long to get off as the one timer. And I think that's a big thing. That's something maybe even Owen Tippett can learn from. Because he's supposed to be the second biggest shot on the power play. He had a really nice goal. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but he's still missing the net plenty too. Like I'd like to see him get 30 goals, and at this rate he's not going to. But at least Forster now with the goals, it does put all that other stuff into better perspective because look, it's nice that he's their best forechecker and he's doing everything else great. But if he'd have gone through the season with just like 10 goals, it still would be a downer for him. Trust me. regardless of what anybody says, regardless, because he wants to score goals.
Yeah.
So yeah. If he could do both, that's great. That's why maybe 3-4 games ago, I was like, hey, maybe give him a day off. I wasn't saying they needed to send him down, but I don't know if this gets him over the hump either. I'm not that quick of a hot take guy where I'm going to say that, but I think he's at least on the right track.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that this is really good to see the numbers start to pile up a little bit, and I think he has a lot of opportunity because they have so much trust in him, like you said. So yeah, I think it's a really good sign for him. The other person we of course need to talk about in this game is Sam Ersson.
Yeah.
We will talk about his game and what the Flyers need to do to repeat the win in maybe a slightly better fashion tonight. We will do that coming up next.
You know that feeling when your favorite Flyers player scores a hat trick? If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper's our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. Fans can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. With elite players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus the new guys like Connor Bedard, who's got 11 goals. All you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for these stars. Choose from stats from like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
Of course, the Flyers will be playing the Pens again tonight at 7. Catch every second of the Flyers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers. We will be having a mailbag segment later this week, so get those questions in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on the app formerly known as Twitter, or comment over on our YouTube channel. Sam Ersson, man, I think that again, Torts was pretty on the nose across the board with what he had to say post game. I thought when he was talking about Sam Ersson, he said that his consistency has gotten better and better. And you look at his last 2 games were shootout wins, and just the fact that he looks so calm, man. I gotta say that stop on Sidney Crosby in the
Yeah, that was
shootout,
a great
like
stop.
such a great stop, and it was so fun, like with the glove flash
But he
and
didn't know where the puck
everything.
was, neither did Crosby. That was the funny thing.
Yeah,
They didn't know
but
where
he
it
just,
went.
yeah, I just feel like he thinks he can stop every puck, and that's what you want to see in your goaltender.
Yeah, he's one of those goalies that doesn't have a pulse, which I think is a good thing because he doesn't get high or low. He just goes about his business. I think he could be frustrating because he's very good positionally, and when you're good positionally, it could be frustrating. He is the kind of goalie do need to get moving side to side to kind of really take advantage of what maybe he can't do. And his glove is good. Like his glove is as good as Carter Hart. He his stick is better than Carter Hart, but what Carter Hart's got the advantage is he covers up rebounds a lot better than Ersan.
Yeah,
Ersan will give up more
that
rebounds.
is true.
So, but Ersan's what you want in a backup, and he'll be a really good backup in this league.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm just thrilled for him getting these couple of wins with sort of him being the determining factor. And I would say, that goal with 20 seconds left in the third period, definitely not on him.
No,
That was on the defensive scramble that was
yeah,
happening
yeah, oh
in
yeah.
front of him for sure. And so it is really good to see his confidence continue to grow, and I will be interested to see what the starting rotation starts to look like as Torts also sees that in Ersson, because we know how much he loved him last season. And, is Carter Hart going to play fewer games? Definitely something to keep an eye on, because I think it's good for Hart as well to not get overplayed.
No, I think it's good for Hart not to get overplayed. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be necessarily stopping him from getting overplayed. So um, right now, the early projections for Hart on ESPN site is like 50 games, but he's going to be more than that. If he gets to 55, I think that's okay. Anything more than that, I think is too much. So,
Right.
and I think for as long as the Flyers stay in this race or as competitive as the coach wants them to be, unfortunately, I think that's going to take away from some starts from Ersson.
Yeah, we'll see. I just think it's an interesting thing based
Yeah,
on history and what we know towards things of these guys. But I'm assuming Carter Hart will be in net tonight versus the Pens
yeah,
in round 2. And I think that for me, the main things that the Flyers need to do is number one, fix getting scrambly at the end of the game when you're holding the lead. Is like
yeah.
play with a little bit more confidence and a slightly more aggressive style in terms of using the stick in the defensive zone and just working harder to clear the puck. Because I think that was a huge problem in the third period on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think honestly, last game Hart's focus wasn't great. He needs to have better focus late in the game. I think he lost focus. I think it was the third period where there was a goal he definitely didn't like, and I think that was something where he lost focus. And I think he needs to kind of keep that going the whole time because again, with a team like the Pens, you can't let up. Like they're built well enough that they can get a point every time against you, just because of the
Right.
guys they can put out 6-on-5. So you
Yeah.
got to have somehow get a 2-goal lead, and I don't know. We'll see if they could actually get a 2-goal lead, but I think that's going to be partially on Carter Hart to be able to do that.
Right. And I think, one of the things that was so nice about the game on Saturday in a lot of ways was that Sidney Crosby only had 2 shots on goal the entire game, was held pointless in that game in Pittsburgh. But when Crosby comes into
Oh
Philadelphia,
yeah,
it's always a different game. And I think they're going to have to kind of up level their coverage of him in
yeah. This wasn't
particular.
like Crosby had a bad game either, because that other goal, that other shot he took, I forget who we went and just walked by and went right in on the net. He showed more speed on that play than any 36 or 37-year-old should have. It's
Right.
crazy. So you do have to really watch out for him. There's no way around it. And yeah, I think they were on the right track with that for sure. So now Malkin was actually playing a pretty physical game. And I know people at the end wanted there to be a penalty, but there was probably a penalty before the play on that on the Flyers, so they didn't call it. So this was not a
Yeah,
game
they
where
were just letting stuff go then.
they were. He didn't lose focus though. Remember we talked about that? He didn't do that. So we'll see. We'll see what happens next game.
Yeah, that's where I think that the Flyers just have to like not get baited. I think that there is a potential just because the Pens probably feel salty about that shootout loss, especially
Yeah.
after scoring that last minute goal. I think that the Flyers are going to have to play calm and also own the building and be like, no, no, you think like you're going to come back here and even the score? The answer is no, but we're going to be smart about it.
Yeah, and I do want to bring this up because I think it's worthy of mentioning. I think sometimes we know the challenges that the Flyers have. We know. Um, but Carter Hart right now is ranked 21st in the league in save percentage, and he could do better than that.
Yeah.
And I do want to point that out because it's like I know everybody wants to say, well, look at what's going on in front of him and everything else, but you have to put him up against other players in the league like his peers. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and game is a really good opportunity for him to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that that's going to be huge, and I think that one of the other things is going to be keeping that penalty kill as strong as it was, but like let's see if we can keep improving the power play and make something work and throw some looks that they didn't show in this past game. I think just to take the Pens by surprise a little bit.
Well, they're still not taking advantage of net front. That's still like an invisible barrier for them that they can't get by.
Which is so interesting because they were focused on that 5-on-5,
I
but
know.
so they just have to make that translate to the power play as well, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
And then I think that, one of the things that they could consider again is switching up the forward lines and getting a more offensive minded look on that fourth line. But they're
Not
not going to
gonna
do
happen.
that against the Pens. They're going to want the physicality, which I get, but also there were a couple times in that game where they're like, "Oh," and this has happened multiple times this season so far, where there's like a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2, and Delorier is carrying the puck, and you're like, "Nothing's gonna happen here."
Yeah,
So,
there's some very predictable things like that. And while the Flyers are having this kind of success, whatever this is, he's not going to make a lot of changes on that. He
yeah,
still may never do it because he enjoys it. And it's just like at some point though, I think. Look, even like I said, I brought it back to the Leafs. They started using Ryan Reeves less. He's still playing at times. I think you do have to play around with this because I do think you are limiting yourself at times. I do.
yep. And then the other thing is like we talked a little bit about Cam Atkinson and getting him going again
Yeah,
last
he's
week.
struggling.
Yeah, I hope that he can turn it around tonight and have a banger of a game. That is my hope, wish, and dream. In the meantime, it's Monday, so we always use this opportunity to name our nemesis of the week, and we will do that coming up next. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win the league, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. You don't have to spend hours on multiple job sites looking for those candidates with the right skills. You can do it all with Indeed. Candidates you invite to apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who you only see in a search. As soon as you sponsor that post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for those quality applications that match your job must have requirements. So visit indeed.com/locked on to start hiring now. Go to indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel over on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering all the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube to subscribe. It's time for our nemesis of the week. Last week, we talked about the continuing Metro madness and trying to get through that and really see where the Flyers look in the division. Battling the Devils pretty hard. That was like unfortunate that they lost in overtime on that one, but were able to pull it out against the Pens in game 1 in the shootout that we talked about today. This week, I think it's the Nemesis is sort of shifting gears in a lot of ways. And last Friday, we talked a little bit about this upcoming road trip where they're going to face the Yotes, the Avs, and the Preds, who are 3 very different kinds of teams that they're going to have to face and make adjustments between those teams. Looking at the up and coming Yotes, looking at the established contender Avs, and the Preds, who are kind of in the mushy middle, but have had some success overall as of late. And so these are going to be 3 tough matchups for the Flyers against teams that look really different. And I think that adjustment is something that the Flyers have struggled with a little bit this season so far. And so that's sort of my nemesis this week is preparing and finding success on this road trip and what that will look like for the Flyers.
Okay. Mine's going to be different. For whatever reason, I kind of, and look, somebody could do more digging on this, but sometimes I notice things, injury trends in different sports, right? And so lately, the last couple of years, it seems like there's a lot of torn pectoral muscles with players. This year you've
Hmm.
got Max Jones and Hamilton. In previous years, you've had guys like Christian Dvorak and a few others. I could find like 5 or 6 easy, just doing a quick search on the net. And I wonder, because when you look at it, right, when you look on like the websites that explain how it happens or why it happens, it's usually between the ages of 20 and 40, and it's usually due to weightlifting. Like guys who lift a lot of weights tend to do
Yeah.
it. This isn't happening during weightlifting for these guys, but I do wonder, are guys doing too much weightlifting in the off season, and is this causing that? That's just going to be my thing. There's always a point. I weightlifted a lot when I was younger. I don't do it as much now. Now I just kind of do natural exercises. But the point is, there becomes I think, a point in time where in sports you could bulk up too much, you could weightlift too much, and remember, hockey players aren't supposed to be the most buff guys. That does, you know, thinner tendon strength guys are just as important because of the
Right.
aerobic shape that a hockey player needs to be in. So it kind of makes me wonder, um, is this happening too much? I don't know. I'm just going to say it's a nemesis of mine because I hate to see guys go out for it, and there's 2 out for it right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting question just because you see these guys looking to get bulkier and stronger even younger. And that's where the issue is for me in terms of, the concern is that guys who are very young are trying to bulk up and when they're not like fully developed.
Right.
And I think like when you're in sort of that sweet spot in your early 20s to like your mid 30s, I think that's fine, to a point, in terms of hockey and what's best physically. But like when you have like 16, 17-year-olds who are doing that to try and get stronger for their draft years, like that is definitely something to
Yeah, I
keep an
haven't
eye
tried to
on.
track that. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good point for sure. I do want to mention a little fun thing that's not Flyers related, but regional hockey related. That was pretty exciting to hear for me. Last Friday, the University of Delaware announced they're adding a women's hockey D1
Yeah.
team to their program. Very excited to see that. They have a men's team, but they are adding a women's team to the slate. They've had it as a club sport since 2003, and they're top 10 nationally ranked at times in terms of their club team, and it's time to up level. They're going to be joining the CHA, and they're going to start in the 25-26 season. So they'll hire a coach in the new year and start recruiting, and they'll have over a year to set up this team, really set themselves up for success. They're going to talk more about it in a press conference today,
Do they have a
Monday
rank?
at TAM. They do have a rink.
They do. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't even
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So,
That's nice.
that's like more college hockey in the Philadelphia area is
Yeah.
never a bad thing.
No, because I'll
Ro
I'll go cover it. Like Princeton
Yeah.
is who I generally go to now, but Delaware's 30 minutes from my house. I'll definitely be there.
Yeah, so between them and Rowan having a program, I think it's cool that there's some women's hockey getting established in the
Yep.
Philadelphia area.
No, it's nice.
Absolutely love to see that, and I'm excited to hear more about that today. In the meantime, we will be back tomorrow. Of course, we will discuss Flyers versus Pens, part the second, and it's Tuesday, so we'll have our Phantoms Tuesday report. A little bit of a struggle going on this past weekend as of recording. We've still got one more game to go, so hopefully they can get it together, and we'll talk about it on tomorrow's show. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got those mailbag questions, get them in via email at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. Flyers are playing the Pens tonight at 7. You can catch every second of the Flyers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a fantastic day, everyone.